Yes, indeed. We are live on this Saturday night on college basketball coast to coast platforms on YouTube, as well as Twitter, X, and on Facebook. Ready to recap this Saturday in January of conference play as we get everything cranked up for college basketball heading to the best month of the year, the month of March. I am merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Rives. Good evening. I'm at your service in the recap mode of a bevy of games that have really been going on for over 10 hours now, starting earlier in the day with the likes of Kentucky playing Tennessee, Virginia playing SMU, UConn playing Georgetown. As the day has progressed, teams like Arizona, Michigan, Duke, and others have won. We're ready to recap all of it here as part of college basketball coast to coast. Thank you for finding me on all of these outlets. Again, if you're finding us on Twitter X, for example, go hang out with us, not only here on that social platform, but on the College Basketball Coast to Coast YouTube page. Just search College Basketball Coast to Coast on YouTube. You can find us there. You can also see the show right now on Facebook. And even if you're watching after the fact, we were doing this live on Saturday night when most of the action has wrapped up. We've had some interesting Saturday night action, including Texas Tech beating BYU. We're going to talk some about the Big 12 here and how good it is with Arizona and BYU, who we know are really good at the top of this conference. But you mix in some of these other teams like Kansas, like Texas Tech, and others. This is obviously a loaded conference. Houston, don't forget about them. They're not in action today. They'll be in action tomorrow. And even Iowa State was rolling along, but they've lost a couple of games. So the Big 12 is a big deal. The SEC is a big deal with teams like Florida and Vanderbilt and Tennessee and Alabama up at the top. And don't forget about others that are trying to contend, like Texas, like Georgia, like Auburn, on and on. In the Southeastern Conference. And then you've got the loaded Big Ten as well. What a story Nebraska is. They're undefeated, but Michigan at the top, Michigan State at the top, Purdue at the top. A lot of the Big Ten teams were out west, by the way. And speaking of out west, later on in the program, we'll get some insight from Matt Zimick. Love his work with not only the Trojans Wire USA Today website, but here on College Basketball Coast to Coast. He covers USC sports for USA Today, also all of college sports, really, with the College Sports Wire from USA Today. But in specific, USC was playing Purdue today. We're going to talk to him about that and all the other Western basketball, like Arizona winning in the Big 12. They came all the way east to Orlando, where I do the show here out of the Tampa Bay area in Orlando, about an hour away. Arizona came all the way east, had some trouble putting UCF away. Johnny Dawkins' Central Florida team is good. But my Lord, Tommy Lloyd's team loaded. They haven't lost a game. They got the win. I want to talk to Matt about them and some of the other Western basketball. That's later in the program. Also, while we're promoting straight ahead, let's talk some SEC with Vince Ferrara, longtime insider with the Tennessee Vol basketball program. Again, Tennessee and Kentucky did battle all the way back at the beginning of the day in Knoxville. It looked for the longest time like the Vols were going to get a win over Kentucky, but once again, Mark Pope's team scratches claws and puts a big rally on, and they end up defeating Tennessee in the final moments in a 2-point win, and things got a little chippy at the end of the game. Always a rivalry, Tennessee and Kentucky. So Vince Ferrara with 99.1 FM, the sports animal in the Vol Network. He's part of the morning show with John Wilkerson. I love his insight, not only just on Tennessee, but the rest of the Southeastern Conference. Florida with a huge win at Vanderbilt. Just how good is the SEC? We're going to be talking about that coming up here on the program with Vince straight ahead in just a few moments. Again, there's only one top 25 team currently in action. That's Gonzaga out of the West Coast Conference, which, by the way, this is the final year that Gonzaga will be in the West Coast Conference. They're going to move into the newly reconstituted Pac-12 with the likes of Oregon State and Washington State and the Mountain West teams that are going to be coming over as part of leaving the Mountain West to the new Pac-12. Teams like San Diego State, Utah State, Colorado State, they're leaving and headed to this new Pac-12. So too is Gonzaga. But Gonzaga right now, off of a big win earlier in the week over Washington State, they're playing Seattle University. No, not the Seahawks. The Seahawks are the bigger deal as we do this live right now in Seattle, honestly. They're clobbering the San Francisco 49ers to advance to the NFC title game. At last check, the score was 34-6 in favor of the Seahawks. This is the Seattle Redhawks, a fairly new Division I program in the last few years. They're in the West Coast Conference. They gave Gonzaga problems a couple of weeks ago at Gonzaga. They were leading in the second half. Gonzaga had to win in overtime. Right now, the Zags lead 26-20 late in the first half. That's the last of the top 25 games that's going on this Saturday night. We'll keep you up to date on that one as we do the show live. Obviously, if you're seeing and hearing the show later on Saturday night, on Sunday, you already know that result and what happened there. Again, Arizona's win over UCF was 84-77 for the top-ranked team in the country, undefeated. Michigan beat Oregon 81-71. They only have the one loss and a bunch of wins, bunch of quality wins this year. That game at Oregon. Duke won at Stanford. They won the two ACC games at Cal midweek and at Stanford tonight. Won easily 80-60. Carlos Boozer's son, Cam Boozer, 30 more points. I mean, he is a truckload, and 14 more rebounds in that win. UConn has now won 13 games in a row. Connecticut had to hang on to beat a feisty Georgetown team who's not very good, but they did get the win earlier today. That's 13 straight wins for UConn as they won the game 64-62 for Danny Hurley's team. He's still got a couple of veteran players like Alex Caravan as one of the outside shooters, Solomon Ball, solo ball as well. Terrace Reed inside had a big game. We go all over the map on college basketball coast to coast. So there's some of the teams at the top. And Nebraska, what a great story. The best start in program history. They won again today to go 18-0. They wiped out Northwestern at Northwestern 77-58. If you're wondering, Nebraska has already beaten Illinois, Michigan State, Ohio State, Indiana, and now Northwestern in the Big Ten. They are a contender. How much of a contender? Stay tuned, but they won big again today. Again, it's college basketball coast to coast. Thank you for finding me. Let's move on here and talk some more and bring a guest on here to talk some more about the Tennessee-Kentucky game won by the Wildcats. Remember, they had the last second shot win earlier in the week over LSU in the final second, where LSU missed the two free throws up by one. Kentucky called timeout through the inbounds pass a la Christian Laettner against them in 1992. And the player caught it and turned and scored with 1 second left. What a win for Kentucky. So now you have this game today in Knoxville where they were in big trouble but came back to win it. And better than me just tell you about it, let's get some more insight right now from a guy that was right there to give us that insight inside of the newly renamed Food City Arena, the Thompson Bowling Arena on the UT campus for Tennessee in Knoxville. Let's do that now as college basketball coast to coast does continue. So, Vince, you were right there, as I have said a couple of times already here on the program in what is now the Food City Arena, Thompson Bowling Arena. I always joke with you. Good to have you on college basketball coast to coast. And, okay, do we call it more of a big comeback win for Kentucky? Do we call it more of Tennessee letting it get away? Combination of both? What say you?
Well, I know. Great to be on with you, TJ. You're the man. They're obviously the easy comp out is say both, but Kentucky has done this before. I think it's 3 straight games where they've had big deficits at the half and they've rallied back. So they're comfortable in that situation. Tennessee let their foot off the gas. And it really, and Rick Barnes kind of alluded to it in the postgame, it really kind of started going sideways for them late in the first half. They still, at the half had a double-digit lead at 42-31, but it was kind of sloppy and sluggish, and they didn't close out the half. It really had a chance to separate a 17-point lead in the first half. There were opportunities for them to just run away from Kentucky, and because of that late first half, football, we talk about the middle 8. In basketball, it's the 4 to 6, end of the first half, start of the second half, and Kentucky clearly won that. And then in the second half, it was just little by little, just chopping wood. And Tennessee would get 2 points, Kentucky would get 3. Tennessee would turn the ball over. Kentucky would get a layup or make their free throws. Here's the differences between the first half and the second half between the two teams. The Kentucky scored 49 in the second half. Points off turnovers. Tennessee in the first half, 10-0 advantage. Second half, 15-2 Kentucky. Points in the paint. Tennessee 16-8 advantage in the first half. Second half, 22-14 Kentucky. And then second chance points, Tennessee and Kentucky just 2 apiece in the first half. 17-5 advantage for Kentucky in the second half. Kentucky turned the ball over just one time in the second half. When do you see that in big-time basketball, TJ, that a team only turns the ball over one time?
They had to have it. They had to play well. They had to play well in the clutch, and they did. Oweh got a big bucket late. They hit a couple of free throws that were key. Then it was kind of the bizarre in sequence where Tennessee got a 3 off that could have tied the game, and it was no good, got the rebound, and then Kentucky fouled them. And then came the whole, okay, make the first free throw, and then Rick Barnes calls a timeout. How do we miss the second free throw and try to get the rebound down by 2? What about that whole end of the game situation in Knoxville? It ended up working out for Big Blue.
Yeah, well, you described it where it's noteworthy, and that's the 3. The 3 is by a reserve freshman guard, a fadeaway 3. It's not what Rick Barnes called at the end. That's not the shot he wanted there. He wanted Nate Ament with the basketball and have him drive towards the rim, and they just didn't get him the basketball. So Henderson jacked up that 3 with 4 or 5 seconds to go. Rebound the fouls you mentioned by Gillespie. They're down 3, so Gillespie makes the first, intentionally misses the second one. Jalen Carey for Tennessee gets the offensive board, but he's blocked going back up. And then, final horn goes off, and team started to walk away, and I think Kentucky said something to Carey. He went back over and 2 hands shoved him hard, and Carey is a big, strong boy. I should say. He's not a boy.
That's not how you and I would have chosen to go and shove. Probably not him. We go find the manager, you and I. We don't go find that guy. Yeah.
That's exactly right. or some fan that deserved it in the front row or something like that. But yeah, and so then the whole benches came. The game was over, so everyone came over trying to separate them, officials and stuff. So really was not a topic of conversation in the post game. I was there for it. So thankfully it didn't escalate, but there were no post game handshakes. They just sent Tennessee sent their guys to the bench, and the coaches did exchange pleasantries because there's respect between the two sides. Mark Fox, the former Georgia head coach, is on that Kentucky staff with Mark Pope. And, Kentucky has found ways that, first half it looked like they were going to get run out of the gym.
Hey, I put it to you. I mean, this has totally changed the narrative. This is 5 days that have changed the narrative because there were a lot of people wondering, is Mark Pope going to perhaps be in some trouble in year 2? And the last second jumper at LSU, and now this comeback win, at least for now, has certainly changed the narrative about Kentucky. That's undeniable, right?
Yeah, it is, because they got great production from the bench. Tennessee's bench has been pretty good this year, and they outscored them by 14. And Aberdeen was awesome for them, and that's Aberdeen. Oweh. I think those are 2 games that in the NCAA tournament, TJ, could take over and win a tournament game for Kentucky. And I'm not sure if anyone really knew that they had those I think Oweh, yes, he was a preseason player of the year, but he hasn't always had those kind of games. It's been kind of spread out in their production. Aberdeen now, last couple of games, he's really taken over and has looked unbelievable. He was unguardable. Tennessee could not keep him in front of him. And so I think if that continues, and we know teams evolve, I think you could see this team winning some games in the NCAA tournament, especially because the strategy was a part of what they did, and Tennessee had to come out and guard their 3-point shooters. Tennessee didn't guard the ball screen very well, and so that put them out of position for rebounding, and then Kentucky was able to take advantage of it. So good stuff from Kentucky, but Tennessee's issues like turning the ball over in crunch time resurface in this game.
Love the insight of Vince Ferrara. Very stellar background right now that he's got here
Appreciate
on
it.
the college basketball coast to coast
Billboard.
live show here on all of our different outlets and platforms because he's promoting that he's on 99.1 The Sports Animal. He and John Wilkerson. Sports Talk with John and Vince. Weekday mornings talking all things Tennessee. And he was there for the Kentucky comeback win over Tennessee. All right, couple more real quick on this game. Then I want to talk big picture SEC. Kentucky will now play Texas coming up midweek. Again, I mentioned that's kind of changed the narrative. Tennessee now takes a week off before playing Alabama. So maybe this comes at a good time after a double overtime win over A&M to just, have a few extra days of practice. Or maybe you think they should, there's nothing they can do about it, but it would be better for them if they were on the floor Tuesday or Wednesday to try to work some of this out. What is your thought?
Well, that reminds me, Kentucky actually had 1 day less rest, and they were at LSU on a Wednesday, and they came to Knoxville and won. By the way, that's fourth straight that they've won in Knoxville, which is strange. Tennessee's won at Rupp some too, so the road teams having success is strange in that series. So, yeah, I think if those guys carry over what they work on in practice, and this loss hits them hard, and I thought that it did hit them hard in the post game, maybe more so than some others, then yeah, if it stings, you let it marinate and you let it motivate you. And I don't think this team has had the leadership that with experience, 3, 4, 5 year guys that they've had. Barnes has had the luxury of having the Mashaks, the Zigglers, the Josiah Jordan Jameses, those kind of guys. They don't have that to help them through. He said, if we had veteran guys like that, we win this kind of game, and we win this game. And there's still like new guys that don't understand how you have to commit, especially on the defensive end, and then make smart plays at the end of games. He says they're more offensively talented than even last year's those guys they've had the last few years, but they don't have those other intangibles and ingredients to win these kind of games right now. If they develop it, then yeah, you can do some things in the tournament with more talented offensive players. But right now, they don't have all the in the chest stuff. So we'll see what it should in theory help them to work on some stuff and clean it up. But they've practiced well at times, and it hasn't always carried over in the games. And then even when it does carry over into games, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Just kind of half to half, minute to minute.
Still, they've gotten some wins, Tennessee, and again, they'll take some time off before playing Alabama. All right, let's talk a little bit about the rest of the league on this Saturday. Florida has gone to Vandy and won about 3-4 hours, depending on how fast you drive to the west in Nashville from where you are in Knoxville. Impressive for the Gators, or maybe are you going to have the take that Vanderbilt was due to come back to earth some? And now Texas got them earlier in the week, and Florida got them in a high-scoring close game here. What is your take on how much, again, do you credit Florida, the defending national champion, with pieces back, or is Vandy kind of coming back to earth and realizing the SEC is really tough, game in and game out?
I will take a side on this one, and I'll say more credit to Florida. I still think Vandy is very good. Now, they're not the top of the league defensively. I mean, you mentioned the two high-scoring games, the last couple of games. That's not sustainable in this league, I don't think. But Florida, really, they woke up in the Tennessee game. They had Boogie Fland, who was terrible from three. He started picking up a little bit before Tennessee game, but man, he just kind of took over during that game, and so they started hitting those threes, and their guard, the transfers that they brought in, finally were making an impact. And they're so long; they dominated Tennessee on the glass. They're an outstanding team. If their guards can hold up at their end of the bargain in Fland and Lee, man, with that front court, they can be as good as anybody in this league, and they're already getting there in terms of the record. So, TJ, I think that's more speaks to Florida kind of finally figuring it out with their new pieces.
Chenwalou was very good today too, as well. Houck has come on as a scorer, and again, these guys were part of a championship team a year ago. I know Walter Clayton was the leader, But there's something to be said for having some pieces back, and we'll see what happens for Florida. They got a softer part of the schedule here where they play LSU, they play Auburn, they play South Carolina in the next 3 games. Vandy, by the way, will play Arkansas in their next game at Arkansas. Might be looking at 3 losses in a row. Arkansas is going to be angry because Arkansas lost to Georgia on Saturday. By the way, are you a believer in Mike White's team? I know Florida got them a couple of games ago. They took a couple of losses, but now they've kind of bounced back a little bit. Are you believing in Georgia as a real threat in the SEC? Just real quick.
They're better. They're improved, but I don't think they're an SEC title contender. No, they're too inconsistent for me.
Interesting that this league was so dominant a year ago, but you could make the argument right now that some parity is kind of taken over. Anybody can beat anybody. You could at least make that argument. I'm just double checking through the games as we do this in real time on Saturday night on college basketball coast to coast at how many teams are in the top 50 of the net ranking. The SEC is ranked as the number 1 conference right now in the net ranking in real time. And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams. If I have the number 8, 9 teams that are actually in the top 50 right now in the net ranking. So again, it's a stacked 16-team league. And why do I get the feeling we might see a couple of turnovers at the top with 2 or 3 teams over the course of the next 6 weeks? Is that fair, Vince Ferrara?
Yeah, TJ, and I forget which bracket projection I saw. It might have been our friend that we've had on our show too, Mike DeCourcy. I don't know if it was his or someone else's tournament bracket. Had 9 SEC teams with 2 more among the first 4 out, something like that. But I'm pretty sure it was 9.
And help me, my brain is everywhere. Wasn't it like 11 teams last year? It was 10 or 11 last year. Close to it, yes.
There might have been more than that.
Yeah. Well, I'll look it up while we're talking. But still, it's not unheard of that the SEC could get a 10th or an 11th team is my point, right?
Yeah. I absolutely, because there's a whole lot of inconsistency and parity in some other conferences too. I think that's you're starting to see some of what we saw in football, kind of seeing some of that in college basketball. There are a few teams.
You were right. It was 14. Higher. 14 of the 16 made it a year ago. I don't think it's going to be 14 this year. Probably not 13, but still, hey, you could see 11. You could see 10 or 11.
And that could be still the best in all of college basketball among all conferences. So it'll be different. It'll be loaded more on the mid to back end of the seating, as opposed to more in the top 4 lines. But because there's a whole lot of that around college basketball, you could see the SEC still have a good showing.
Yep, there's a bunch up at the very top as well in the top 20. Teams like Vanderbilt, like Florida, like Alabama, that are all in the top 20 right now of the net ranking. And Tennessee is 23, by the way, in the real-time additive here after the loss today. All right, we'll see what happens. Again, the Vols have the week off. I always love your insight. We encourage people to find you 99.1 The Sports Animal, 99.1 FM in Knoxville, the Vol Radio Network. Vince does a fantastic job. That's the flagship station. He and John Wilkerson are the morning show from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern time. I always love your SEC insight. Promise me we do this again, at least once more or a couple times more, as we rock along on these Saturdays on college basketball coast to coast, my friend.
Anytime you want me to.
There you go. Vince Ferrara with me earlier in the evening, as again, he saw Kentucky put together a second straight road win in the SEC that was wild, as it could have gone either way again today in Knoxville, but they find a way to win it after the last second shot win in Baton Rouge. It is college basketball coast to coast. We are live on this Saturday night for a little while longer. We're going to be here on Saturday evenings with my guest, Jason Powers, my wingman that's always here. Love his insight. Coach Ari Russell out of New York City. We go all over the map, including Deshaun Tate in Atlanta, Tyler Jones in the Southwest in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You just saw Vince Ferrara there in Knoxville, Tennessee. I love the insight of our insider, Adam Zagoria, who's in New Jersey. Many thanks to Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, who always helps out Whenever I put the bat signal up to have him on as a guest or help promote what we're doing. I love Mike, the Hall of Famer from the Sporting News, a Hall of Fame writer that covers everything with the sporting news, but specifically this time of the year with college basketball. He's a guru. Love having him on. Numerous different guests to help me break it down as we talk college basketball here on the program, and things rock on. In fact, to that end, live, let's do this for a few minutes as well with a guy that I love to refer to as kind of our Western bureau chief here, our insider, if you will, for anything West Coast basketball, or at least in the Mountain or Western time zones. Let's say hello to Matt Zemek, who's back aboard on college basketball coast to coast. I see that smile because it's not only college basketball our time of the year, but you're a Seattle native and the Seahawks are rolling tonight. So it's like double smile for you this evening, as they are about to be in the NFC Championship game as they've demolished the San Francisco 49ers. So that's the pigskin. We love the round ball. Good to have you to talk some college basketball this evening, my friend, for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, grew up in Phoenix, but lived in Seattle for 20 years, and I was a Seahawk fan in Phoenix. So you can say I'm a Seahawk native. Not Seattle native, but a Seahawk native.
The wild thing with your Western travails, the triangle of Seattle to Phoenix is also including Denver, where you now currently reside. Yep. And the vital question is, the Broncos are in the AFC title game. Bo Nix is injured. Do you have a series in you if Jared Stidham cannot perform, which nobody knows how he's going to do in the AFC title game? Can Matt Zemek get out there for a series for the Broncos if need be? While we talk more pigskin before the basketball.
You know, I could hand the ball off. I'm not very mobile, though. Tom Payne's going to have to come up with.
Get rid of it quickly.
We're going to see so many wide receiver screens and hitches,
dump offs,
dinks and dunks,
draws, and whatever. Wow, it's wild.
Like you definitely want to take the under in the AFC title game right now.
I would think so.
Lock it in. Could be like a service academy game. It might be number might be 36.5, something like that.
Love it. All right, let's bring it back to the basketball. This is mid-January Saturday. We can't read too much into all of it because there's a long way still to go, including March. Still, I know you're going to have opinions. You're going to have takes. Let's start with this. Arizona came all the way to my part of the world here in Central Florida and beat UCF. UConn won a 13th straight game in the Big East earlier today over Georgetown. Duke out west beat Stanford, so they beat them decisively. They complete the sweep of Cal and Stanford in those longtime rivalries of the ACC. They beat them both in the San Francisco Bay Area. Give me a couple of opening thoughts on those three teams and how they look today here for our college basketball coast-to-coast audience.
So, Stanford beat North Carolina, hung 95 on the Tar Heels, middle of the week. So Duke comes in and absolutely thumps them. So I don't know how much it says about Duke or even Stanford. I know it says that North Carolina is not very good, and North Carolina followed the loss to Stanford with a loss to Cal. Basically didn't show up for its Bay Area road trip. But, just if we're talking Arizona, UConn, and Duke, there's a clear line of demarcation involving these teams, TJ. And it's because UConn's in a thin Big East, Duke's in an increasingly thin ACC. Like I thought North Carolina State might be good this season, not really. Some other ACC teams kind of falling off the pace. I know that Louisville needs Mikel Brown to be healthy, and that's kind of been the elusive thing for Pat Kelsey. Get everybody healthy, Louisville can be really good, but that's kind of been hit or miss. But Arizona's in a different situation because Arizona's going to get it from Texas Tech, from Houston, from BYU, from Iowa State. That Big 12 is absolutely ferocious in the top tier. So UConn and Duke aren't going to be rigorously tested on nearly the same scale that Arizona will be, but that doesn't guarantee anything. Like you can be the only really good team in your conference, kind of like Miami in ACC football. Clemson in ACC football, you can kind of be a juggernaut on your own. You don't have to have the rest of your conference be really good, but it does remain that Arizona is going to get tested all the time. UConn and Duke occasionally. So that's like a plot point to watch for those three teams. Arizona is in a very different situation from UConn and Duke, UConn in particular.
While we have you here, let's stick with the Western theme. And we saw Big Ten teams come west and do well. Again, you write for the USA Today Trojans Wire website. You were locked in on USC and Purdue. So I want initial thoughts on that. But also Michigan and Michigan State have won out west and won impressively on this Saturday. Start with Purdue first at the win over USC in the Big Ten.
Purdue is becoming the comeback kids. Purdue was down 9 to Iowa midway through the second half, rallied to pull that game out of the fire, was down to USC late, down a bucket or two, and was able to pull through down the stretch. Braden Smith is making winning plays for that team. So Purdue's not dominant, but Purdue is finding ways to win on nights that, for other slightly more wobbly teams, those games would slip away. Purdue is managing to own the final 4 or 5 minutes of games. And just in looking at this band of games overall, it's a pretty bleak scene for Western basketball this season. The Mountain West not doing especially well. And then for the Big Ten teams on the West Coast, so Oregon and Washington falling today at home to the Michigan schools, like, their NCAA tournament hopes are toast. It's only the middle of January. We have 2 months left, but like, their NCAA tournament chances are on life support. They're both floating near 500, several games below 500 in the Big Ten. Like, if Oregon or Washington's going to have any chance of making the tournament, they need to go on a 7-game winning streak. And who thinks that's going to happen?
Not likely to happen, right?
Not likely. So like it's John Rothstein likes to say it's only January. But it's pretty late. It's pretty late for Oregon and Washington. So rough times. As for USC, close loss to Purdue, that's going to look good in the net rankings. If USC can defend like this consistently, Trojans should be in good shape. And let's keep in mind, USC's already gone to the Michigan schools on the road, already played Purdue. Like, USC has already played the toughest Big Ten team. So the schedule is going to get easier from here on out. If USC takes care of business, like it did with the win at Minnesota a week ago, beating the mid and lower tier teams in the Big Ten, that should be enough, because USC went 12-1 before Christmas. Won Maui, got some good road and neutral wins tucked away. That's going to put USC in a good position as long as it takes care of the middle and lower tiers of the Big Ten. And getting to the NCAA tournament was the goal for Eric Musselman this season. So a missed opportunity, to be sure, but if USC defends and fights like this, should be in good shape getting into February in the home stretch.
Hey, back to Michigan. I mean, they were destroying teams. They've already set the Big Ten record before January 1st with 6 times margin of victory 30 or more. No Big Ten team had ever won 6 30 or more margin of victory games in the same Big Ten season. They did it before January 1st. So now they get into conference play and it's a little tougher. And I didn't go to Michigan. You didn't go to Michigan. We're not, waving the maize and blue pennant here. But this was impressive because they could have maybe slipped at least once in these 2 games with Washington the other night and Oregon today. And they were, again, handling their business professional. Just say something about Dusty May and the job that team has done, because this could have been a trap in the Pacific Northwest this weekend for the Wolverines.
Yeah, Michigan steadied itself after the loss to Wisconsin. And Michigan and Purdue, really, TJ, if you think about it, they've been on similar tracks just the past 2 games. Haven't been at their best, but they kind of buttoned things down late. And got some very mature workmanlike wins. So for Michigan, there were questions a week and a half ago, would Yaxel Lendeborg play against Penn State? And he played. And I thought, gosh, it's Penn State. Shouldn't you be able to take care of him without? And like, Lendeborg hasn't looked 100%. Dusty May needs, I think, to sit him down at some point, give him a breather, get him fresh for March. Maybe he didn't want to do that on this Pacific Northwest swing, knowing how much of a grind it was going to be for everyone on that team. But Dusty May is going to need to manage Lendeborg's minutes. If I'm Michigan, I'm not too concerned with not playing my best in these Washington and Oregon games. My concern is I need my big guy, my dude, to be fresh, to have a lot in the tank for the stretch run for the Big Ten tournament, and especially, of course, March Madness.
He's had health problems. He's had back problems, and we're only in the beginning of the Big Ten schedule, really the first 6 or 7 games here. So that is something to watch. Still, they have Elliot Cadeau, the former North Carolina guard, who's played very well for them. Dusty May has shown himself to be a tremendous coach already at Florida Atlantic and now here at Michigan. They have pieces, but this is a tough conference. And again, Michigan State won tonight as well against Washington. And Tom Izzo's team is going to be right there at the top of the Big Ten to come all the way out and get that victory. And that kind of leads me into something else that's fun. Is Nebraska for real here in the Big Ten? Obviously, they're 18-0. Obviously, they've won road games, my Lord, with Illinois, at Ohio State, won a road game at Indiana last weekend, won another road game at Northwestern. You don't accidentally win these games in the Big Ten on the road. How, I guess the better way to phrase it, how for real are they, do you think? Now that we've laid it out about Purdue and Michigan State at the top, does Nebraska belong in that conversation? Their record says they do.
Certainly belong in that conversation, and we'll get a chance to prove, exactly where they stand. Now, if I was a betting person, I'd say that Purdue or Michigan ultimately will win the Big Ten. But hey, like Nebraska finishing third in the Big Ten and getting like a number 3 seed for the NCAA tournament, that would be tremendous. And let's remember, Nebraska is the only Power 4 conference that has never won an NCAA tournament game. And Nebraska was seeded number 3 in 1991. And Coach Danny Nee had a great team, but Pete Gillen, who was he was a killer. He was a Cinderella back then in March Madness. Took Xavier to the Sweet 16 the year before in 1990. But in 1991, a 14-3, he knocks off Danny Nee's Nebraska team in Minneapolis. So Nebraska has never won a March Madness game.
Incredible.
And so each win just solidifies Nebraska on one of those top 4 seed lines, and thereby dramatically raising the odds that Nebraska is finally going to win that first NCAA tournament game. It's an amazing story.
Again, Sanford led them with 22 points tonight. They were never threatened in the second half. They beat Northwestern 77-58. I'm just looking. Nebraska's short-term schedule is manageable, I believe, as well, like for the next week, but then it is going to toughen up after that. Stand by. I'll give you the next couple of games. Interesting, they're playing Washington at home, then at Minnesota. Now, that may be a tough game at Minnesota. They should be able to beat Washington at home. That would make them 19-0 going to Minnesota. After that, though, my friend, at Michigan, Matt Zimick, then Illinois at home. So, I mean, it's going to sort out. And then later in the year, obviously, they're going to have a stretch at Iowa. They're going to play at USC and UCLA later in the year. So, they also play Purdue. They get Purdue at home. There are going to be some pitfalls, probably. It would not be surprising if Nebraska ends up losing 2, 3, I'm saying this, maybe even 4 games before it's over, right?
Yep, and I'd say if you're Nebraska, I mean, you obviously, you want to maximize this run as much as you can, but I think the realistic goal for Nebraska is a 3 seed, right? Because you're not playing a number 1 seed in the Sweet 16. You get a comparatively more manageable bracket than if you're a 4, having to play a 5 in the second round. I think, get a top 3 seed is really the goal for Nebraska at this point in time. We'll see what happens.
All right, a couple more here. Again, Texas Tech beat Brigham Young tonight. You were referencing the Big 12. Kansas has come to life, beating Iowa State earlier in the week, beating Baylor on Friday night, a rare Friday night Big 12 game. But we got to get used to this stuff with TV and all the deals. And the Big 12, I keep joking, is on every channel except the Food Network now, it seems like, for games. So they had a game on Fox on Friday night, and Kansas won it. So with Arizona out west and how good, obviously, they are, and BYU with A.J. DeBonsa, who may be the number 1 pick in the draft, Texas Tech in the mix, Kansas in the mix, Iowa State at the top of this conference. You were kind of referencing it earlier. But that's a good win for Texas Tech at home, and Grant McCaslin's team. Let us not forget they were an Elite Eight program a year ago. Still have JT Toppin. That's a nice win for them tonight against BYU. They're going to be right there toe-to-toe with the likes of Arizona and Kansas and pick one, Iowa State, whomever at the top of the Big 12. Houston as well. Don't leave them out, right?
Yeah, I was talking with an SEC fan earlier today, and he said, that, hey, the SEC's ranked ahead of the Big 12 in the net rankings. Let's just make it very simple. If a conference is much worse 1 through 7 or 1 through 8, and it's far, far better 9 through 16, you don't say that conference is better. But the net rankings, it's an aggregate. You're looking at the whole conference. You can't pick and choose. You're looking at the full conference top to bottom. If you wanted to say the SEC is better than the Big 12 top to bottom, okay. But really, who cares? The SEC is not going to have any team on the top 2 seed lines, and maybe not even top 3. Probably the SEC champion will get a 3 seed, but the SEC is not.
Florida, by reputation, if they were to win the conference, win the tournament,
would have to go on a big roll, because
you don't
Florida
think they would be on the top
up.
2 seed lines because they didn't do enough out of the conference with quality.
Yeah, lost to TCU, had some other stepped into a few other potholes. Florida would have to go unconscious to get a 2 seed. It's looking very likely the SEC is not going to be represented on either of the top 2 seed lines. And then you move to the Big 12, Arizona, Houston, BYU, Texas Tech, Iowa State. Those are 5 teams that are going to be well represented on the top 2 seed lines. It's going to be similar in the Big 10 with Michigan, Purdue, and one of Michigan State or Illinois probably gets a 3. The way things are going, Nebraska could get a 3. So if you want to say the SEC is better top to bottom, 1 through 16, fine. But again, who cares? The Big 12 has the Final 4 contenders. The SEC, Alabama's been stumbling, was fortunate to come back against Oklahoma today, but we're now seeing Vanderbilt come down to earth. Arkansas can't handle the road. Arkansas lost at Auburn a week ago, now loses at Georgia. And so, Arkansas, I thought it for a time it had a higher ceiling, but you got to win those road games against, decent opponents in conference. So the Big 12 and the Big 10, really, they're jockeying for best conference in the country because they both have 4 or 5 teams that you look at and say, Sweet 16 floor and a Final 4 or better ceiling. The SEC does not have a single Final 4 caliber team. Florida's figuring things out. Todd Golden's showing us how good a coach he is, but Florida's not at the level of the top teams in the Big 12 or the Big 10.
I think they could figure it out, and they got pieces. I said that before you came on. Long way to go. This is about the time of the year they figured it out a year ago. They don't have Walter Clayton anymore. That's a huge difference.
That's going to matter in March.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So a few minutes left here with Matt Zimick. Love his insight. Let's go back to the West again. North Carolina lost both of the games. Stanford took it to them in a comeback. What was it? Okori is the freshman guard that set the Stanford freshman record, right? 36 or 38 points to beat North Carolina midweek, and then Cal handled them tonight. North Carolina closed what was a large deficit late in the game, but still lost. All right, there's a lot of uproar about Hubert Davis. They're still 14-4. How much do we read into trouble these last 5 days? I put it up on the screen here, the lost 5 days in the San Francisco Bay Area. Is it that big a deal in mid-January, Matt?
I think it is. And, car rental companies should be sponsoring North Carolina basketball because really we should be calling him Hubert Avis.
Oh.
There's no D.
Oh, no defense. Very nice.
No D. There. Hubert Avis. Yeah. North Carolina's given up over 50 made three-pointers in its last 4 games. At what point does a team recognize, hey, maybe we should run teams off the 3-point line? We're getting shredded out here.
I'm just thinking,
when is it going to kick in that North Carolina needs to be defending the 3-point line? It's crazy.
Not typically winning formula there, but again,
it isn't. But Hubert Davis has had trouble consistently coaching defense at North Carolina, And yes, this is a big deal. Like, if you can't even split a Bay Area road trip, like, this is not Jason Kidd era Cal. This is not Mike Montgomery, Mark Madsen, Arthur Lee, Stanford in 1998, or Casey Jacobson, those elite teams. These are, Stanford's a bubble team.
I'm going back before that. I don't see Jason Kidd playing for Cal, right? I don't see that happening.
Yeah. You don't see Todd Lichty playing for Stanford.
Todd Lichty. You saw my Jason Kidd and went Todd Lichty. But still,
there you go.
This is I mean, again, we are not in that part of the world. On Tobacco Road, they live this 365. North Carolina and Duke basketball, the hatred, the rivalry, and Duke had no problems whacking both Cal midweek and Stanford tonight. And the opposite is true for North Carolina, and that's a story this weekend and coming off the weekend for the Tar Heels. I don't care who else they've been beating in the ACC. That's going to be a story.
It's a very big story. And you look at, in contrast, what Ryan Odom's doing at Virginia. Like, Virginia looks like the second best team in the ACC, and Clemson smacked down Miami. Brad Brownell's doing another really good job. And, if Pat Kelsey has a fully healthy Louisville team, that becomes a really good team. So North Carolina might be fifth, sixth best in the ACC. You're not the coach of North Carolina to finish fifth in the ACC. So yeah, this is a real problem. I don't think Hubert Davis, call him what you want, is on the hot seat right now. But like, if North Carolina gets, let's say an 8 seed and loses first weekend after finishing fifth in the ACC, he's definitely on the hot seat going into next season. You just can't have repeated mediocre seasons at North Carolina. Even if you're Roy Williams' guy, like, that's just not going to fly. So he's not on the hot seat right now, but he is coaching his way onto the hot seat for the start of next season. No question about it. And, like, NC State's down with Will Wade, and Will Wade's going to come back with a vengeance. Horrible loss to Georgia Tech. Yeah. So I just say that because Will Wade, he's going to get some dogs in the portal. Like, he doesn't like this team. He's thrown his players under the bus. Will Wade's going to chase the bag and spend in the NIL arena. NC State probably is going to be good next season, just because Will Wade's not going to accept anything less than the top dollar in terms of the roster that he's constructed. So, like, North Carolina is not even doing this against a really stacked ACC. Just wait until other programs in the conference get better. While we're talking about the ACC, TJ, Red Autry has to be done at Syracuse. You cannot lose to Boston College. Syracuse gives Boston College its first ACC win of the season. Syracuse has to clean house and seek an elite coach at the end of this season.
And again, that's an alum there for them, and it's always difficult. We're talking about the same thing with Hubert Davis. Let us not forget, Hubert Davis got North Carolina all the way to the championship game in that first season back now 4 years ago. Any final thought from you? You've given me good time here on this live edition of College Basketball Coast to Coast. Matt Zimick, anything else here from you, or are we good on a Saturday night?
Well, I am the West Coast bureau chief, so a little dip into the Western notebook before we go. UCLA loses by double digits at Ohio State. The Bruins right now look like a first four team out so far. If they don't beat Purdue this coming Tuesday, Purdue played USC, so Purdue stays in Los Angeles for the back end of its 2-game Southern California road trip. If UCLA does not beat Purdue, Bruins are probably going to be a bubble team all the way into early March. And Mick Cronin missed the NCAA tournament 2 years ago in 2024. Like, you cannot be doing that at UCLA. And the other two notable results from the West, San Diego State beats New Mexico in a close one. Aztecs absolutely had to have that, and San Diego State needs to continue to stack wins in the Mountain West to have any chance of getting in as an at-large. Didn't have a great non-con season. And St. Mary's loses to Santa Clara, and Santa Clara was favored in that game. Vegas knew something, so St. Mary's did not do a whole lot out of conference, and the Gales have gotten into the NCAA tournament because they've dominated the WCC. A loss tonight could complicate the picture for Randy Bennett and the Gales.
And interesting, in the Mountain West, Utah State has been the top team. I was making mention of this before you came on. Do they get a second team or not? Utah State lost at Grand Canyon. I know on College Basketball Coast to Coast, we did a watch along the other night of the Grand Canyon, New Mexico game where Bryce Drew got thrown out of the game in the second half. They got rolled at the pit in Albuquerque. New Mexico looked fantastic. Now New Mexico, welcome to conference play, goes and loses to San Diego State. Grand Canyon comes back home and gets a huge win for them over Utah State and damages Utah State a little bit as an at-large team. Welcome to conference play one more time with these Western teams, right?
Absolutely. So Mountain West is looking like 2 to 3 bids at this point. San Diego State needed to win to kind of become that third team and got it, but San Diego State has a lot of work left to do. So Utah State 1, New Mexico 2, San Diego State 3 in terms of the Mountain West pecking order right now.
Love it. My friend, I'll let you get back to your Saturday evening in the Mountain Time Zone. Seahawks did very well. Broncos did very well. By the way, Gonzaga is the only top 25 team still playing, and they're having problems in Seattle in the downtown arena, the Climate Pledge Arena. It is only a 6-point lead, 42-36 with about 15 minutes left. Again, Seattle University, fairly new Division I program, gave them problems.
My alma mater, and Tarek Scooble's alma mater.
We love it. You got a good pop in there. Good for the Red Hawks. They were winning at Gonzaga 10 days ago, the whole second half. I don't have to tell you this. And the game went to overtime before Gonzaga won it. So that game is still going on. Again, if the audience is watching us later on Saturday or on Sunday, you already know, hey, Gonzaga killed them. What are these guys talking about? At the time we're doing this, it's still a fairly close game. We'll see. That's the last top 25 game going on. You did a great job helping me with the West. Again, they can read you Trojans Wire, the USA Today website from Gannett. Go check it out for the USC recap of the Purdue game, etc. for Musselman's team. I always love your insight here on college basketball coast to coast. Thank you, my friend, on a Saturday night for hanging with me. All good?
Always a pleasure. Love recapping these huge Saturdays. We know that college basketball season's in full swing.
Love it. Follow him right there on the screen at Trojans Wire for the USA Today coverage. Follow him as well on his personal handle at Matt Zemek, Zemek. Matt Zemek, thank you. Have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate it.
There we go. Matt Zemek with me. Few minutes left here. As I mentioned, that Gonzaga game is ongoing. Again, they have an injury to Braden Huff, a knee injury, suffered in practice earlier this week. He's out for probably the rest of the regular season. Mark Few was saying that, probably out 4 to 6 weeks, late February at the earliest for them in the West Coast Conference, yet they're still getting the job done, having beaten Washington State earlier in the week. They're a top 10 program. EK underneath, good guard play. Let's see if it continues for Gonzaga. A couple of more topics. Actually, some of you are also weighing in with some comments here on the program. Let's see. Scott Broadway is here watching. I believe he's in the Carolinas. He says, what about the Gators and that win over Vanderbilt? Again, we were talking about this earlier in the show. Florida starting to come on here. The big blowout win over Tennessee. Also a victory at Oklahoma where they won easily earlier in the week. Now they beat Vanderbilt in Nashville. It's not everything. And Florida's schedule will be a little tougher down the stretch of the season, but a nice win for them. Travis is also watching the show saying the Gators are looking good. I'm with you, Travis, on that. Lisa, who's in Memphis, who has known me since I was a wee TJ, loves the Memphis Tigers. Memphis in action tomorrow. Memphis struggling, though, so far this season. So it's good to have all of you hanging out and watching here as part of college basketball coast to coast and giving me some comments. Remaining few moments, I think we've pretty well covered everything tonight. We didn't talk a lot of Big East. Again, UConn has won 13 games in a row. All the way back earlier in the day, they beat Georgetown by 2 in Washington, D.C., 64-62. Connecticut also got a win at Seton Hall earlier in the week. Seton Hall beaten by Butler earlier in the day. So that's back-to-back losses for Shaheen Holloway's team. St. John's and Rick Pitino got a nice win for them at Villanova tonight. St. John's, Seton Hall play Tuesday night at Madison Square Garden, so we'll keep an eye on that in the Big East. as well. Other than that, I think we pretty well covered everything here for a Saturday night. My thanks again to Vince Ferrara of 99.1 FM, the sports animal, the radio station, and the Tennessee Vols Radio Network in Knoxville for being with me. Thank you also to Matt Zemek with me from the USA Today Trojans Wire website. Great insider for everything in the West here with college basketball. Jason Powers is typically with me. So is Ari Russell. So is Deshaun Tate, Tyler Jones, etc. on all of these different shows. Our insider, Adam Zagoria, as well. We got many more Saturdays to do this through the rest of the year, all the way through March, and the madness and the mayhem, and all the way through the Final Four in April in Indianapolis when all of this will end. Be here with us on Saturday nights. We love the college basketball. I am merely TJ Rives. As you see, follow me at Buck Sideline Guy. Also check out our social handles for college basketball coast to coast on the YouTube page, as well as at CBB Coast to Coast on Twitter X. Love how you can get a hold of the program on the various social media outlets as well. For now, though, we're good on this Saturday night. Hope you enjoyed it. Talking some college basketball here this evening. We'll come back in with programming frequently. Keep it locked in on the College Basketball Coast to Coast YouTube page, the Twitter handle, on my Twitter handle that you see right there on the screen for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, these guys, at Buck Sideline Guy. Thank you for being with me on a Saturday night here for College Basketball Coast to Coast.